everyone, welcome to card number 15 of my holiday card making series. For today's card I am using a Fluffles the cat image from Stampendous. This one is called Fluffles Tree. So I've inked them up with Memento Tuxedo black ink, and I'm going to stamp them onto CC Designs Copic quality white cardstock that I've already die cut with the largest of the Spellbinders standard circle dies. And then I'm going to color them in with Copic. So I started with Fluffles, and I'm starting with W3. And I'm purposely being very messy with the coloring, just kind of dabbing and swirling the color into place. And then I'm going in with W5 and doing the same thing, and then finally W7. And I want him to kind of look like a little scruffy, because he's just a little monster cat. As you all know, I love Fluffles. So once I've got that, I'm going to use my colorless blender just to dab around the color, just to give it more like dimension and scruffiness. And if you can hear a little bell in the background, it's actually my cat being a little brat. Anywho, now I've gone in, I'm taking W1 just for his little cheeks and just to keep dabbing at the color, just to kind of press it deeper down into the cardstock to give him like the, messy fur kind of texture look. And then I used R20 for his ears and his little nose. And then for the star of the tree I used Y21 and then went in with Y26 for the darker area and just quickly blended it all together. And then the tree itself, I am using YG25 and then YG67. And again, not being super precise. This kind of image, like, you can just tell by the motion movements and the fact that everything's shaking, and it's just kind of like a messy image that your coloring doesn't need to be perfect. So then for the little ornaments, I'm using R24 and then adding R27, and I'm not even bothering to blend those together. They just don't really need to. They're very close in color. And then for the blue ornaments, I'm using BG13, and then adding a little bit dark area with BG15, and then using the same yellows that I used on the star. And then again using the Y21 and Y26 for the little pot the tree is in. And then for the band, I'm using the same R24 and R27. So then finally for a bit of shading along the bottom of the image, I'm just using W1. And again, just kind of messily scribbling it down. And then blending that just a little bit with a W00. And then I take my W1 again and just add a bit of shading like around the ornaments in the tree. Again, I'm not being precise, I'm just kind of scribbling it down. Yeah, and then just leaving it as is. And now that the whole image is dry, I'm dabbing on the colorless blender again, now that the Copics have dried, just to press it down further, just to give them that good scruffy look. So now for the card base itself, I'm using Echo Park Season's Greetings pattern paper. I love this pattern paper. I think it's one of my favorite this year for Christmas papers. So I already had a layout in mind when I started this card. And the whole idea was that I wanted this large circle to kind of hang off the edge of the card a bit, because it's so big, it takes up quite a bit of a standard A2 size card. So I'm going to adhere my pattern papers down, and then I wanted to use a strip of ribbon. So I'm taking my Making Memories ribbon slot punch, because I'm going to punch out a space since there's a good sized white space left above the tree there. So just kind of marking where I want the ribbon slot punch to go, and I pressed in a good deep mark, and then just using the setter to punch the hole in the cardstock. And then just applying adhesive, but before I press it down onto the card front, I'm going to run some ribbon through. And again, I'm using my AmyR's Wrinkle Ribbon. I tried to use a different ribbon, but I just love this ribbon. I love the finish of it. I was going to use a red satin, and it just did not work on the cards. So again, I've got mine from All Out Scraps. It got, they're out of stock on them. If you guys really, if they contact them enough, hopefully they will get it back in, because I'm obviously going to run out really soon because I can't stop using it. So hopefully they'll be able to get it back in stock soon, because I don't know where else to get this ribbon. Anyway, so once I've got the ribbon, I taped it to the back of the card front, and then ran another piece through along the top, tied that in a bow, and then just trimmed the edges off with the scissors. So once that's done, I just flip over the card front and make sure the ribbon bow is out of the way so I don't cut it, and use the edge of the pattern paper as a guide to cut off the circle that was overhanging. And then for the sentiment, I'm using my Holiday Greetings stamp set, and I wanted to stamp it onto this snowflake pattern paper from the Echo Park pack. So I've lined up my sentiment onto the acrylic block. I'm using my Stampin' Up embossing buddy. to add some powder to the pattern paper so that the embossing powder doesn't stick to all the paper, to my fingerprints or anything. And then stamp the sentiment with pigment ink, and then I'm just using detail white embossing powder to emboss the sentiment so that it stands out, because as soon as pigment ink dries on pattern paper it pretty much becomes almost invisible. So once I've trimmed that down, I used my little EK Success corner rounder punch just on the one end, and got that how I wanted it, and then adhered that into place. And again, the little part that's hanging over, I just flip over the card front and use scissors to trim that off. And then I wanted to add some brads. So this is just one of those, and of course the name escapes me now, you all know what I'm talking about, but you can get these at craft stores. And it kind of helps to, when you want to pierce holes kind of in a circular design. This one obviously was too small for this image, so I still had to kind of shift it. So really I probably could have just eyeballed it, but I just had it in my head, I had to use it anyway. It helps with like spacing the holes anyway, so you get them spaced evenly. And then yeah, I've got like just a selection of different sizes of Doodlebug brads. I think these are the pool party color. Anyway, it's just like a kind of a turquoise color. And then just use my AmyR Memory Keepers like brad piercing and setting tool. And then I wanted to add just one more brad just to finish it off because it just looked uneven. So once I got that done, apply more adhesive to the card front, and then that's going to go onto the card base itself. And this is Stampin' Up, I think it was Marigold Morning it was called. It came out years and years ago. And it just kind of went right well with the paper. And then of course I had to add diamond stickles because you couldn't have a Christmas card without some glitter. So I added it to all the Christmas bulbs and to the star, and then really lightly added it to all the branches as well. And then that was the card front. And then for the inside of the card, I pretty much followed the same idea. I just used scraps of pattern paper left over from trimming the front of the card, and I adhered that into place, just keeping it a little bit more simple. I die cut another circle of white cardstock, so I'm going to adhere that into place as well, so there's a place to write your message to the recipient. Flipped it over again, and then just trimmed off the excess cardstock. And then I'm going to use another sentiment from my holiday greeting set. So again, using my embossing buddy on the pattern paper to keep it from picking up any of the excess embossing powder, and stamping the sentiment with pigment ink. And then I'll use the detail white embossing powder. I prefer detail embossing powder because it's finer, especially when you're doing sentiments like this where it's, you know, really thin, light areas. You really want the finest embossing powder you can get, so that otherwise you'll miss a lot of the detail, which is regular embossing powder because it's too thick. So then just adhering that onto the paper, and again flipping it over to trim off the parts that hang over the edge. So once I've got that, it's just a matter of adhering that to the inside of the card. So that is all there was to it today. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will hopefully see you guys in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!